Welcome back to another edition of the Renatus J.A.M. I'm Jay Stark.
And I'm Matt Snyder.
And we are here with none other than the Vice President of Information Technology for the Renatus corporate team, Mr. Todd Nichols.
Howdy, everybody.
Double D.
T-O-double-D. That's right. Todd, I am just curious. You and I have known each other for 6, 7, 12 years, 12 years.
Something like that.
So we've known each other for a little while now. Mm-hmm. And tell us the story about how you got involved with Renatus.
Well, so that's a good question.
That's why I asked that question.
I know. I got to think about it for a second, how I want to respond to that. So I was working for Intermountain Healthcare on a very large project. And one of the developers who was working for me in my department, he brought it to my attention that he had a company where he knew the owner, and the owner was just starting out the company and needed some IT work. And so I mentioned to him, and he says, I don't know the technology, because it was Microsoft technology, and we were doing Java and Sun and everything.
Gotcha.
And so when he mentioned that to me, I said, Brett, you got to think about this a little differently. Even though you don't have that set of skills, you have the connection, so find somebody that has that set of skills. And by the way, I'm a candidate. I have Microsoft in my background, even though we're currently doing other technologies.
Right.
And so the two of us met Bob, and that was the first time I had an opportunity to meet with Bob. And we talked about the project that he wanted to do, and so Brett and I signed up as moonlighters outside of our day job, and then the project just took off, and I could see that it was an opportunity for me to go self-employed. Things were changing. I could see some changes coming at Intermountain Healthcare, and so I decided that I'd like to go out on my own and be self-employed, which would be the second time I had done that as a software engineer. And so I just signed up full-time with you guys and started working for you, and rest is history. Here we are.
The rest is history.
Yeah.
I'm not letting you off that easy. So tell me a little bit more. So you had a conversation with Bob, and at first you started with the idea that you were going to moonlight. What was the time period between I'm just going to moonlight versus all right, I'm going self-employed?
It was only a couple of months at most, because
right.
I think it was in the summer, and then I was working for you guys in October. And
okay.
When I made the transition, I took a week off, or I don't remember exactly how I did that, but I remember going to a conference working for Intermountain Healthcare, or a course actually, web development course that was in Reston, Virginia, and then when I came back, I was full time with you guys as a consultant.
Gotcha. So you got brought on to build AMP.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was the first project.
Yep.
And during the national conference, I had kind of put together a timeline of how everything had come about with Renatus, and we started at 2011, kind of moved forward. But AMP, oh, look at that. You got a cheat sheet.
I decided what I gave you when you did that at Nationals wasn't quite right.
Oh, really? Okay. So walk us through a little bit of that timeline.
Yeah, I have the actual timelines here. So the fall of 2013, like I just mentioned, in October is when I started working, and we were across the street.
Right.
And
right, when we were all in QBville. I remember that.
QBville upstairs, yeah. And I remember talking to Bob and him telling me, hey, we just had this great year. We made so many dollars. And I remember thinking, actually, that amount is my entire budget for my department of 35 software engineers, software architects. And so is this a good thing? But since I was a consultant, it's okay. Come and do this job.
Right.
When this job is done, then go to
move
the
on
next
to the
job
next
and all that kind of stuff. And
right.
As a consultant, you don't care how many hours you work, because you're going to get paid for all the hours. And I spent my whole career where I worked really hard for the company and they pat you on the back, and that's about as good as it gets. So you donate an awful lot of time
Right.
above the 40 hours a week
Right.
kind of thing.
So wait,
So-
hang on before you finish that. And I know I remember there was one thing about your coming on board with Renatus. So you were also being courted by Adobe at the time, if I remember right.
Not Adobe.
Not Adobe.
Yeah, it was a company. Shoot, I can't remember exactly the name of the company.
Okay.
But they were a new startup company down south, South Salt Lake, and they were a medical data warehouse company.
Gotcha.
And several people were saying, "Todd, come work for us," and they're doing very well. They're making hundreds of millions of dollars. You know,
Nice.
They've really taken off.
Right.
But I love this environment.
So
This
tell
is
me.
fun.
So tell me that right there. There was one thing in particular that kind of threw you over the edge with Renatus. You remember you don't know what I'm talking about?
Well, there are a lot of things. When I weighed everything, there were a lot of things that I love about working here and working for Bob.
Oh, that's not the story we would. So
Help me
here, Matt.
remind me.
Matt, let us tell you a story now. So when Todd was sitting down with Bob brought him upstairs and introduced him to me and Randall, and I think Jason was with us at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was the three of us upstairs, and we were doing our daily ritual of taking an ice cream break. And Todd walked upstairs.
I forgot.
And we talked for a little bit. We were just joking around, being funny. And he walks back downstairs and we go back to work. So later, Bob comes upstairs and he goes, "Hey guys, the good news is Todd's going to come on board." And he said the thing that really threw him over the edge was the ice cream break, right?
Yeah.
And so like you said, you had taken a little bit of time between IC and coming over to us. And so I made sure that our freezer was stocked full of ice cream. So day number 1, Todd comes to work. It's like 2:15 in the afternoon. We're like, ice cream break. We all get up. We walk over. And guess what Todd says to me?
I don't eat ice cream. because I was at the time following the paleo solution as far as my eating habits.
I don't eat ice cream. So ice cream was the deciding factor, but he doesn't even eat ice cream.
Sounds like it was a culture thing, not the ice cream
Exactly.
itself.
Just the fact that you guys break for an ice cream break, that was cool.
Break and hang out.
So, yeah.
Get to know
Nice.
each other. Yeah.
All right, so let's keep going through your through the timeline here.
So, whoops, I bumped the table. We went ahead and started working on AMP.
Mm-hmm.
And AMP was done the spring of 2015.
Nice.
So it took some time coming up to speed, understanding the technology and everything, making sure that we were not actually making changes in production. We were making changes in a test environment and then deploying to production. So we had some things that Adam and I worked through and made some changes.
I remember that being one of the first hurdles you had to overcome was creating a second environment where you could develop in this environment and then release into that environment, into production.
Exactly.
So,
and here we are with Helios, and people are seeing that we actually take the system down once in a while, and we do our updates and bring it back up. And that's the way. Once Adam and I made the changes, we were doing that also. And then I said, Adam, we really need to get to the point to where we just flip a switch.
mm-hmm.
And so Adam was able to make that happen for us. That's still on our. We want to do that for Helios because we don't like this downtime. We want to be able to just flip a switch and things. The new update is there, and there are ways to do it. It's just we haven't reached that point because we've been dealing with some other issues. So
right.
We'll get there.
All right, we'll keep walking through the timeline because there's a couple things I want to point out here.
Yeah. So we went live with AMP, and then that summer I was still a consultant, and I wanted to be a consultant, entrepreneur. I want to be an entrepreneur, and Bob says, Todd, come to work for me, full time. I says, no, I want to be an entrepreneur.
Right.
And then another month goes by, and Todd, come to work for me. No, I don't want to do that. I am working for you. I'll be a consultant for you as long as you want me to, and then when the work is done, I'll move on. And then in October again, Todd, come to work for me full time. And I remember, actually, let me back up. So I said, yes, I'll go ahead and come to work for you. So I decided to become a full-time employee again. and surrender the opportunity to be a consultant.
Surrender the opportunity.
So
Lay down his sword.
I'm tied down to a job again.
Yep.
So, but I figured it was a great opportunity, and so I could see a lot of positives of making this decision.
Yeah.
But Bob's been so good to all of us. You know,
Oh, yeah.
he's a great employer, and he's got a great vision for the company, and I'm all in. I love it. So anyway, in the fall of 2015, we started talking about Helios. We didn't have a name. We just were talking about, what if we completely replace the business center and we add all this functionality that you guys want, rather than try and just add pieces on top of a system that we know isn't performant, and,
right.
and not, there's a lot of improvements that can be made, but they're the improvements to the business center would be so significant, because there were architectural implementations that really constrained us on taking it anywhere beyond what we were doing.
You're saying it was in 2015.
That was 2015, the fall of 2015.
The fall of 2015 is when we started having the conversations.
I became an employee.
In 2015?
In 2015.
Okay.
In October-ish, and about that same timeline we were talking about, okay, let's actually replace.
Right.
Now, Bob had said he didn't want to completely replace, but now that AMP was out and we had these other things we wanted to do, the discussion was we probably ought to replace.
Yeah. Right.
Because the work would be significant to get where we want to be.
Right.
And then what we've done, if we do that, is we've added a bunch of cool new features on top of an architecture that can't scale. And so we really need to do something different. So we decided to replace the system. And we were all in my office, and you and me and Randall, and I can't remember, I think Adam was in there.
Yeah.
And we were all just talking about what should we call this thing as an internal project name. Everywhere I've ever worked, you have internal project names. Do you guys know what Cairo is? You ever heard of Cairo other than the place?
Egypt?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've heard of Egypt, but
Cairo was, if I remember right, it was the name, I think it was the name of Windows 98 or Windows 2000.
So it was
it was a Windows operating system release. It was the internal project name.
Okay.
But you don't know of it. You don't know of a Microsoft
Cairo.
product.
No,
right.
yeah.
Cairo.
Yeah. No.
So the idea was that Helios was just an internal project name. But Bob liked it so much, it's like, no, this is going to be the name of our software.
Man, that was so funny, because I remember us talking about it, and then we had to look up what Helios meant,
Right.
and we're like, oh, well.
Like Greek mythology, right? Like,
Right.
Yeah.
Something about the heavens or
Sun
gods
rising.
or something.
It's sun. It's about the sun. Uh-huh.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, so Helios was the
Sun god, I think.
was the bringer of the sun.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
people, every oath that was sworn under the sun, under Helios, because as he was pulling the sun across the sky, he could see all.
Right.
Okay.
So it was a new dawn,
New age.
We got a new age, new software. This is really cool. New phase for the company where
Right.
we want to go. Yeah. So it was a cool name. It stuck. We all liked it.
Yeah, I remember
And it
that.
became the product name rather than just the project name. So
Well, yeah, that's
yeah.
so.
So we decided that to try. We didn't have a lot of money. Didn't have a big budget like I had when I was working for GE or Intermountain or the government. There's deep pockets in some of those places, but since we were just a young company starting out, we didn't have a lot to spend, and so we looked around, and I had experience offshoring, but my experience had always been I went through a local staffing company that went through another staffing company that went to the offshore.
Ooh.
And so
And everybody's geting paid.
everyone's getting paid.
Yeah.
They're all taking their cut,
Yeah.
and so we wanted to find a way to go direct, and so I talked with one of my previous employees, and I said, do you know anybody that I could go direct with? And that's how we found Caprosh.
Wow.
And so we've built a great relationship with
I didn't know that.
Rohan from Caprosh. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll never forget. We had him here right as we were starting.
Yep, right at the beginning.
We had Rohan, and I don't remember
Pradeep.
who.
Rohan and Pradeep.
Was it
both came
Pradeep that came
in.
with him?
Yep.
And they came, and we talked, and
Yeah.
I remember that. That was the kickoff.
Yeah. And Adam and I knew that we wanted to go with Microsoft technologies.
Right.
And I'd been in like I said, the Java, Sun, all that kind of let's say the non-Microsoft people.
Gotcha.
I'd lived the anti-Microsoft world, even though most of my career had been the pro-Microsoft world. So I've been on both sides.
Why did you and Adam want to go to Microsoft?
We were already there.
Okay.
So with the business center, we were already in the Microsoft space.
Yeah.
And Microsoft, it's interesting, the Microsoft, non-Microsoft worlds, they just one up each other. They just sit there and keep going like this.
Apple versus
so
Samsung.
Exactly. At any moment in time, one of them is ahead of the other, and then the other one catches up and passes, and so you're safe either direction.
Right. It's nice when you have one common ecosystem to have all your technologies built within. So I wanted to talk with you. So in 2015, that's when we kind of started really formalizing what Helios was going to be, and how many, let's say just hours, did you have to invest in simply educating the internal team with how development works? because
I've been doing that for years.
I will not forget just how, on the user end, we want everything now. And why can't you just whatever, right? Move this button, make this functionality, do this, do that, do the other. And we want it now. And so I'll never forget, you pulled out a little graphic, and it's got 9 different pictures on it, and each picture is according to a different person perspective of what they want, right?
Yeah.
And so what it is, it's supposed to be a swing in a tree.
It's a tire swing on a branch of a tree. Yeah.
And so you've got how the engineer sees it, how the customer sees it, how the salesman sees it, and
the salesman, the way they see it, there's this big sunshine, beautiful. I mean, it's so absolutely gorgeous and everything. Yeah. They oversell it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And then you've got how the engineer understands it. And it's got the tree like cut in half with the swing going through the tree. And
then there's how the user what the user really wanted is the last one. It's just a tire swing on a branch of a tree.
It is funny to see how everybody perceives it. Just that's the case with pretty much everything in life, though, right? Like you could take anything, like driving, for instance. How many people view it in what way, and so but it's been eye-opening for me to be able to sit in some of those meetings and help, just start to understand how this all comes together, because. Yeah, to me it was like, why can't you put a button there? Yeah. Right? Just put the button there.
It's easy. You can put a button
there. Right? Yeah. But it's not going to do anything. Let me show you something. Right. So,
I'm going to call you, Matt, on this phone right here. And look how easy it is. I can punch in your number, and you're going to feel the phone ring, and you can pick it up. That is so easy. Anybody can do that.
Right.
Anybody. That's so simple. Okay, now let's talk about the satellites and how the heck they got up there. The rockets that took them up there, and then the fiber that comes into the building to make it so that the
there's a lot to
hubs
it.
Work and everything. Oh yeah. So there's a level of complexity.
I still don't understand that. Like I know that there's something about packets, data packets going through the air, and magic happens somewhere. There's a magician.
You know what, Matt? Zeros and ones. That's all you need to remember. It's all zeros and ones.
Just flip a switch. On off.
Right. That doesn't make any sense. Anyways.
But I'll never forget how you would draw out these different, and it almost looked like timelines when you were talking about the different, how you were going to have to spin up this environment and that environment and this other, and how this is the playground, and then this is where it gets developed, and then this is the QA, and then this is prod, and you kind of walk through all of that. So let me, it's taken a long time, I think, for you to educate all of us on how this works, because not for you, but for us, this has been kind of the first massive development project that we've been involved with. Mm-hmm. So,
and this one's really not that big. When I was working for Intermountain GE, we were working on they had a partnership where Intermountain had the domain knowledge because they have the doctors and the nurses know what it is that they need in their systems, and GE had the technology knowledge to how to build software. They had the brand, be able to go out and sell the software and everything.
Right.
And so they come together and try to build software together, and we're talking hundreds of millions of dollars, and we're talking hundreds of developers and project managers and QA and business analysts and user experience people and subject matter experts, and there's just it's a big deal.
Right.
And trying to make sure that everybody understands what you're trying to build, you got to have communication between each other. If you and I are trying to build a piece of software, you say, Todd, I want to do this, 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 like the Renatus web admin tool. You just come to me and say, Todd, I need this screen, I need it to be able to do this and show me this data and go get the data. So I sit there and say, okay, what does this look like? Well, it looks like what I want. Can you just add this? Can you just change that? And so you and I work through it, and sure, it's a piece of cake. Okay. When you've got 100, 200, 300 people all trying to build something together, you don't have one-on-one conversations.
Right.
So you have to have some form of communication, which becomes technical documents, project reviews. There's all kinds of operational mechanisms that you put in place to be able to build the software and make sure that what it is, you just built what you want. And there's an awful lot of projects that fail, and a lot of it is this. It's being able to communicate and the different objectives. So the project that I was on before I came here, that major project didn't have a success, and it was one of the reasons why I view it was not successful was because the two major companies, Intermountain and GE, had competing objectives. One wants to make a profit, one wants to provide patient care, right?
Right.
And so it was difficult trying to get everybody to work together on the same priorities. And I saw the same thing here. But I saw it on a much smaller scale, on the $1 or $2 million scale, rather than the $200 million scale.
So yes. tell me about what we now affectionately call V0.
So V0, when we started, and there's even a pre-V0. Well, I guess. Yeah, we can kind of mix them together. So when we started the project, we signed the contracts with Caprosh. We had some other people as the product. We had a project manager that we brought on, and then we had a designer, and so we and Caprosh, they didn't have any Microsoft developers, so they all had to come up to speed on Microsoft. Pradeep, our primary developer, he was only part-time. He was working a full-time job. And so
that's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah, he was just consulting, and Adam and I figured we'd be making contributions to the project. And so V0, when we started, we had these ideas of what we wanted to build, but we really didn't. Eric and Nancy had a vision of what they wanted. The home team had a vision of what they wanted. And so we started down this path trying to build the software. We had our environment set up so that we could deploy to dev and to QA, or to test and QA, and then eventually to prod. We didn't have the prod environment set up yet. But anyway, we went along on the project for, 8 months, 10 months, and it was just a slow train wreck. And I could see it coming, but there's not much I could do about it. Because on the one hand, I know what it takes to build software.
Right.
Now, when I was teaching at Newmont College of Computer Science, I was teaching Introduction to Computer Science, and I told my students, I said, what other profession can you go out, read a book, and add $10,000 to your income, to your pay? Just go learn another technology. Of course, nowadays nobody reads books. You just go out and watch some video online.
Go through a tutorial.
Go through a tutorial. Learn another learn another language. Learn another technology stack. Whatever it is, and you can go. You just made yourself more valuable. Yeah. And you have kids coming out of high school making lots of money building software. Well, what you have to understand is the software that those people are building, especially an individual, one person or two people building a piece of software, that's not a robust system. okay? If you just build what you read out of a book and what you're picking up here and there, you're not going to have a very robust system in most cases. Anybody can go in and just tweak the HTML, the GUI. Put a button here, change the text there, and then...
So GUI, for anybody at home who doesn't know that, is the graphical user interface, or what most people see when they go to a web page. That's GUI or GUI.
Sorry, I started going technical because I use the word HTML too. So
yes, HTML is a language that most web pages are written in.
Hypertext markup language. There you go. So anyway, anybody can just go and tweak those kind of things, and then they have the misconception that they can go ahead and just, when you enter data into one of the fields and push a button, then the data goes straight into the database. Okay, and then you go and you read it from the database. Well, it works great. When I'm sitting here playing with it, okay, throw 100 people on it, throw 1,000 people on it, throw 10,000 people on it. Guess what? Now you have performance issues. Now you sit and wait for the screen to paint. And you got all kinds of issues. And so there is a proper way to architect software that you're not going to pick up in just one book on how to build a web application kind of a thing.
Right.
You'll always see the authors make some comment that says, this is just for example purposes only. But a lot of people go and take it and think they can just build a piece of software.
Right.
And then they go live with it and they wonder why people are ticked off at them when they hit 200-300 users and it doesn't perform. So when we designed and built Helios, and that's why I kept saying Helios is going to take a bit of time because it's the iceberg concept. What you see is the tip on any app that you're running on your phone.
Right.
Even just using your phone, this is the tip of the iceberg. The bottom part of the iceberg is all of the infrastructure, the satellites, the towers, the software, the switches, all that kind of stuff. There's a massive amount of stuff in place to make this simple. Mm-hmm. And that's what we had to do for Helios. We had to build all of that. And the Business Center already had a bunch of functionality. And even though we want new functionality, we can't build new functionality without including the old functionality. So we have to build all this infrastructure, and then we have to build all the functionality that currently exists, and then we can add functionality. So Helios, even though it wasn't a massive project like what I've explained in the medical world that I was in, it still was much bigger than anything that you guys have experienced.
Oh yeah.
Okay. And so trying to help you understand what it takes to build the software was a challenge for that first year. And so just before Nationals, that was the Nationals where Bob and I got up and he had to take an egg and smash it on his face.
We don't talk of that event, Todd.
I'm sorry.
Brings Jay pain.
Every single time.
But that was a moment. It was a learning moment. And I have no problem with making sure that we learn from our mistakes.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So I've told my kids for years that there's two ways we learn: our own mistakes or someone else's mistakes. I prefer to learn from someone else's mistakes as much as I can, so we can move faster and better, right? So as long as no one's pointing blame, who cares? Again, I don't care. You've heard me say this many times. I really don't care about blame. It's a waste of time. That's why I'll always say, just blame me. And now let's move on.
I was going to say,
we got past the blame.
That right there is what you've always said. It's my fault. Now let's move on.
Yeah. Right. What went wrong? How do we fix it? Or what did we do to fix it? And how do we keep it from ever happening again? Yeah. That's all I care about. So, and that's what we've done with this project. So, yes, Helio wasn't perfect. It still isn't perfect. No software is.
Nope.
But we prioritize the things that need to be worked on, and then we focus on those things and continue to harden the software and make it more robust. It's
reassuring to me when I see something like, Microsoft or Apple or somebody have just a glitch or a failure in their system where their system goes down. Mm-hmm. And it's like, oh, right. They're fallible, they are also experiencing problems. They have people that make mistakes that accidentally bring their system down every once in a while too. So it makes me feel a lot better. Like we're doing pretty good,
Yeah. We're doing great.
And with the actual launch of Helios, earlier this year, it's real easy to look at, what went wrong, what wasn't working right out of the gate, or I expected something to be where it isn't or something. However, I don't think we've focused enough on what went right.
Oh yeah, look at everything that's working. It's a great piece of software. It does an awful lot of great things. But you're right. Oh, this isn't quite doing what I want it to do, or we totally missed this, or those types of things. Well, that's what happens when you get it out there and people start using it.
Yep.
Right.
See, that was another thing that I noticed here in this company is that when I first came on, people would ask for functionality, and then the functionality would be created, and I'd say, before we release it, test it, kind of a thing. Once we created a test environment in the business center, no one would go out and test it, and then it would go live. It's not doing what I want it to do. It's like, my heck, you guys. So that's why we have in place now. We do things, operating mechanisms for you guys to test things, and we have a whole testing team. But the testing team is looking for problems and issues. It's the stakeholders that need to give the sign off.
Right.
You buy into, is the functionality really what you want, and then out it goes.
Right.
Kind of thing. And we have a bunch of safeguards in place now. That through the years we've been adding to make sure that we do the best we can to make sure that the software, we don't reintroduce old bugs, that we don't introduce new bugs when we deploy the software, and we're also trying to make sure that we're building functionality that the users are requesting, rather than just things that the QA team may say, oh, let's make that change, right?
And that's interesting, because I think you could talk to a user, give that user everything they want, everything, and then turn around and the next user is going to say, oh no, I didn't want that.
Yep.
I don't like it that way.
You can't please everybody. Yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah, because if you do for one and then the other one wants the opposite or wants it to look different or whatever. Yeah, it's just,
and you've got these entire different skill levels as far as knowing how to interact with software,
this goes back to the 9 viewpoints or whatever.
Exactly.
Different levels of sophistication when it comes to using the software even. And
Right.
It's interesting.
So it's the 80-20 rule. Try and get 80% buy-in as much as you can. If we can go higher, it's even better.
Right.
But that's what we do.
And taking an entire group of people with you from an old system to a new system is probably harder than just bringing people on in a system, right?
It is.
It is so much easier to have a new concept, a new idea, go build software and sell it. Throw it on the shelves, or in the old days.
Right.
Yeah.
We used to build the software, and we'd stamp out CDs and put them in the distribution centers and sell it. And then if you screw it up, man.
Todd, how old are you? A CD? What?
Stands for compact disc for those out there.
which I just barely, I got in on the floppies.
Oh man,
I missed the card readers. I didn't have to do that in school, but
remember how if you used to touch like that little middle piece on the floppy disk, it was
rendered
completely useless. Yes.
Yeah.
Man, now you got me thinking about like zip drives.
Yeah, jazz drive, zip drive, all that stuff. Yeah.
You just took me down a rabbit hole, a dark hole in my head.
But back to your point, trying to please everybody, you can't. So you do the best that you can to provide the functionality for people to get their job done.
Right.
And something Bob and I were talking about, we were always promoting Helios, and so the field, we tell them, okay, we're gonna release, and we hate giving out dates because you always miss dates. So really we don't want to say anything until we know it's functioning.
We don't like giving out dates anymore.
Yep. No. So as soon as the features are ready, we QA it, and then we release, or we do user acceptance testing and then release it. But what I told Bob was shift the focus.
Right.
Because the focus of Renatus is empowering people, right?
Yeah.
Helping people be entrepreneurs, be successful in real estate investing and their own business marketing, the opportunity and everything. And so that's the focus. And you can do that without software. Now, because our classes are online, you got to at least have the classes online.
Right.
But Bob's always said, give me a Rolodex.
A Rolodex and a phone.
And he can mark it. So
yeah.
when he made that shift and focused on what Renatus is and does, then that was a positive, because Helios is a tool. It is not Renatus.
Right.
It's just a tool to help people view their education and market the opportunity.
I love that, because a tool is only as useful as the person who is wielding it, right?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
And so you could have the best tool in the world, but with a bad operator, it's not going to be very effective.
Correct.
But you could have a bad tool in the hands of a master, and it could work fine.
It can still work.
Right.
They can still make it work.
But like you said, that is not Renatus.
Right.
Helios is a tool to support the Renatus opportunity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Now, when I was working in my previous job, one of my responsibilities was I had a team that was responsible for the company's enterprise service bus. Okay.
What's an enterprise service? Is that like the bus that people take to get to the corporate office or something?
No, it's definitely a geeky IT thing that only geeky IT people really should be aware of exists. Okay. So when a physician comes up to me and says, "Todd, are we having troubles with the enterprise service bus?" that means I have failed in my job, because the doctor knows about the details of IT. Mm-hmm. Now, if they want to learn it, then that's fine. But
right.
But if there are problems that are occurring in the system, in the tool, what is it that a doctor does? Do they promote clinical software? No. The clinical software is a tool to help the physician be better at his job.
Right.
Okay. And
the
clinicians. Okay. That's the whole point of the software. So when the software isn't functioning properly, and the physician and the clinicians all learn they start hearing all of the details of the inner workings of the system, then that's a failure on the IT group. And so in Helios, if everybody starts talking about function apps, which is a very geeky implementation that we are using, if we start saying, "Oh, that function app's not working," and it starts making it out to the field,
right?
Okay, we're failing.
Right, right. That's funny, because we had that conversation just last week. It was last week when we were talking about the GitHub or whatever you called it. And you're like, if you guys are talking about that, then we've got a real problem
we
here.
Have a problem. You guys are all talking about our GitHub.
Yeah. Man. So, okay. Can I segue away from Helios?
Sure.
So you talked about how you're committed to what Renatus is, how you're all in, and I love that, obviously. Mm-hmm. What has brought you to that point? Because Bob is a great salesman, and I'm sure that when he talked you into coming on board, you're like, okay, yeah, I'll do it. But I know there's been a level of, oh, you know what I just thought of? I want to tell a story. Can I tell a story?
Yep, tell a story.
So we decided once upon a time that we were going to go pheasant hunting.
Yeah.
And for anybody at home,
how far you go with that.
Very few pheasants were hurt in this excursion. Trust me. A lot were scared. We scared the pants out of a lot of them.
Many egos were hurt. No, I'm just kidding.
They were farm raised, by the way. And
they were
paid per bird. Yep.
Maybe we should cut this story out. I just thought it was funny because Todd, we had a pheasant in the river, and Todd decided, I'm going to get that pheasant. We're not going to let that go to waste.
Exactly.
And so it's the middle of November, and here Todd is, trudging across the river, probably waist deep in water, and missed the bird.
That deep, but yeah.
Missed the bird.
Yeah.
And then on his way back, has his phone in his pocket, goes, it'd be really funny if I fell. And then he fell.
Oh, Todd.
That was pretty strong current.
And that was probably before phones were waterproof or IP65.
Right? I kept the phone dry.
You did? Oh,
yeah, I just got wet up to my waist is all.
Oh, so funny though, because I got to know Todd on a whole new level that day. He actually rode home, all the way home, without pants on.
I had my underwear on.
Oh, that's funny.
So tell me, when was there a certain point, or is it just experiences over time that have caused you to really start carrying the banner for Renatus?
So there are certain things that I feel like when I see it, I know a good thing. I think all of us go through that in our life.
Oh, yeah.
Based on our background, when we see something that is a good thing, we know it's a good thing.
Some people call it your gut, but yeah, I think it depends. It's your background and your experience, and
exactly.
And, identifying something.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, a child's not really going to know a good thing because they haven't got enough experience to recognize from experience, experience and knowledge and everything.
Yeah.
So, as I've gone through changes in my career, several changes, because I started out working for the Defense Information Systems Agency of the Department of Defense, and I loved it. That was a great job. I'd probably still be there if the base realignment and closure didn't come through and shut us down and move us all to another base. And
well, I'm really glad it did, because I'm glad you're here.
Yeah, but I've also known in the IT world, you don't see very many software engineers go to one company and stay there for 35 years, because you go in and you end up on one project and kind of stay on that project for your career. Well, all of the mainframers that were working for in the healthcare space or in the banking space, they're kind of out of a job because now the mainframes are gone. They got 30 years out of it, kind of a thing, but you don't see that in today's world.
Right.
If I want to have a breadth of experience, I'm going to work on lots of different projects. Hence why being a consultant was appealing to me. I've done it twice. But anyway, I worked for the Defense Information Systems Agency, DISA, and then I went to work for the LDS Church Building Genealogical Software. And when I was working for DISA, I was supporting the base, created some software to track our information in our bins. We had 1 million bins up there. And then I did the genealogy space, and then I did the healthcare space. And while I was there, I was also an employee of... so when I left LDS Church employment, I was a consultant, and then I was an employee for Intermountain, and then I became an employee of GE, and then I became a manager for Intermountain. And so by that point in my career, I'd been working 24 years, and I'd seen a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
I'd been through a lot of experiences. And so when I sat down and I met with Bob, I thought, this is a great opportunity, because there were only 5 of us at that point. You're out of his basement. I wasn't in on that. But
yeah, we were in the first building at that point.
I was the first non-family member to.
No, was Jason there when you came on?
Oh, that's right. Well, but he had some family connection. I was the first non-family connection person.
Right.
You were still through the network, though. We still tapped you through the network.
Yep. You tapped me through the network. And so I just lost my train of thought.
I'm sorry. You were talking about seeing it or knowing a good thing when you see it.
Yeah. So
there was five. Them at that point.
We were over there across the street, and there were 5 of us, and you guys are still eating ice cream, which we don't do anymore because we're too big, I guess.
Who worked from home for like 6 months, Todd? You stopped coming into the office and we're like, that's it, we're done with the ice cream. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. That was when we were doing the 10 to 14 hours a day, 7 days a week thing.
Right.
So
yes.
Exactly
why pack up and go into the office when you're just working all the time?
I get it.
Yeah.
But so yeah, as I sat with Bob and talked about what he wanted to do, and I could see where he was taking this company, and the vision that he had, I just could see a good thing.
Yeah.
I could see a great opportunity. I could see a lot of potential. I also had another individual at that point in time that he's a lawyer, and he wanted me to do some software for him just on the side. And I thought, no, I'm going to go with this opportunity, because I could see this opportunity could become something. Whereas working with him, yeah, we could have hit it big, but it was a higher risk.
Right.
So when I make career changes, when I realized I wanted to leave church employment, working on the genealogy software, it took me 2 years before I saw the right opportunity. I applied regularly for jobs and went out and did job interviews and everything. But when I saw the opportunity with Intermountain, it was like, that's the one I want to be on. And so when I had this opportunity, it's like, okay, that's the one I want to be on. And this has been a great ride.
Nice. So, now you're going to be here forever.
Absolutely.
Forever.
As long as you guys will have me.
Well, we'll have you for a good long time.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So you've started to apply a little bit of the Renatus education, right?
So I've been so busy for so long, I want to watch education. For those of you out there, I haven't had a chance to watch any of the education because
don't say that, Todd. You're not supposed to admit that.
I mean, so busy building the software that now Adam and I want to watch the education. But I have to admit, I have asked questions. I can glean information from you guys. Say,
right.
What are you doing? What are you doing with your rentals, Jay?
Right.
Christian, how do you pick up your rentals? And I have a little bit of a background because my dad was a elementary school teacher, but I'm sorry, he was a junior high PE teacher. My wife's the elementary school teacher, but I come from a teaching class. I go on and on about teachers in my family. In fact, I was going to be a math teacher.
Well, you've been a teacher.
Yeah, you were just saying you were a teacher.
And then at college level.
Yeah.
So yeah, I had fun teaching for 4 years. That was another story in itself. But anyway, my dad, he had the entrepreneurial spirit. Growing up, Depression, wartime, he never didn't have a job. He was always working. Whether he was a lineman one summer, or whether he was an electrician's helper, or whether he was a painter. And he ended up being a house painter. So he was a licensed painting contractor. And so he would teach school, and then he'd get tired of the kids by summer, and then he would go off and he'd paint houses all summer long. And by the end of the summer, he's like, okay, I'm tired of doing this and can't wait to get back in school. And so he had a nice mix.
Yeah.
And I told him once, I just want to be a professional painter, because I worked for him. I started when I was 12, and I did 11 years with him, which was a great experience to be with your dad one-on-one and your brothers, because it was a family business.
Right.
But it was just part-time. And so we spent a lot of time together, and he taught me the skills of working hard and doing quality work. He always took jobs where he could do our best. Just as an example, we had this one job where it was a new construction, and we came in to paint, and the sheetrocker asked the owner, "Who's your painter?" He said, "Well, Del Nichols." He goes, "Let me go back over my work one more time." Because what my dad and I would do is we would take 600 watts of light. He had this gadget with two 300-watt light bulbs, so 600 watts of light. We'd go over every inch of the wall. We'd prime it, and then we'd go over every inch of the wall looking for any imperfection whatsoever. And then we would put a topping compound on those, and we'd sand them and get it all just as smooth and perfect as we could. Prime it, and then we'd use stipple. You don't even see that anymore, but when you would look at our walls, they were just like your car. The paint job on your car is just nice and smooth and no flaws, okay? Most homes, I can walk into a house. I've had to teach myself not to do this, but I'd walk into the house, and the first thing I see is imperfections in the paint job, because painters don't paint like this anymore. So he was old school, but he taught us quality. He taught us how to do a job. If you're going to do it right. And so we didn't just paint. If there was a board when we're painting outside that needed to be, was hanging down, we didn't wait for a carpenter to come and fix it. We fixed it ourselves. If we needed to do something with the shingles, we would do the shingles. I've done a lot of roofing jobs. So he was like a handyman,
right?
But he was a licensed painting contractor, and he built several homes. He bought a couple of homes, flipped a home. He had a rental, and so I've been exposed to it. I was aware of how to do all of this kind of stuff. But I was just curious how you guys were doing it, what you were teaching, and there's a lot of things I still would love to learn from the Renatus education, which I just haven't had a chance.
Right.
But last year I finally decided, okay, I'm going in, and so we bought a duplex, and now I have a single resident rental also. So I've got a couple properties. I've got 3 doors.
Nice.
So
that's awesome.
That's cool.
But now I need to watch the education to see what I've done wrong.
Yeah.
No. You don't want to sit there and dwell on what you did wrong. You want to look at plan forward,
onward and upward.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Right?
Well, how am I going to do this better the next time?
Yeah.
But
I have to say too, something that I was fortunate to experience when I worked for the government was that I worked for a commander that. They wanted to reinvent government, because right now when you think of a government employee, they go to work at 8 o'clock and they leave at 4:30 and that's it, and if you ask them to do anything outside of the job description, that's not my job, kind of a thing. And sorry if that's a stereotype, but I did see it as an employee, as a federal employee. I loved it working there, but I wasn't raised that way. And those 11 years painting houses, I was taught do the job right, and I got lucky because this commander, he ran all of us employees, everybody in his organization, through back in the 90s what was called investment in excellence. And so we would go out and we'd swing through the trees on rope courses and team building experiences. And,
right.
And Acid River, where you had to try and get everybody across this river, and
Lava River.
And I've already been. You joke about me, laugh about me falling in the water pheasant hunting. So here we are, all of us, on a work day in our work clothes. We didn't dress special for this, okay? And back then I would wear Docker pants and a nice shirt and everything when I'd go to work. So here we all are out on the base, and they had gone and created this big pond full of water. We're going to get wet, okay? And they had taken ties and they'd put them on end out there, and then they gave us like 2 2x6s, and we had to get all 8 of us across there without anybody getting wet, because if you touch the water, then it's an acid river and you die, kind of thing.
Right.
Well, okay, so I took one for the team. I went all in on that one. And it was in the fall. It was like November-ish. So I'm standing there shivering, and one of the leaders comes over to me and says, "Todd, here's the keys to my car. Run home and change your clothes when you come back." But anyway, I went through these experiences, and I remember one person standing there going, "This is stupid. We shouldn't have to be doing this. This isn't our job description," and blah, blah, blah. And that was the exact thing that the leadership was trying to help get rid of. Overcome. And so I've always had, fortunately, I've always been in an environment, from my dad through my employers, I've had opportunities to be a can-do person.
Right.
And in high school, I held a whole bunch of different leadership positions. And in one of my classes, I remember us learning about Zig Ziglar and positive mental attitude. PMA, positive mental attitude. And so when I heard Woody give his drive presentation and things, it all fits right in with this stuff that I've been exposed to, and I am a full-on firm believer in these things. Look for the positive in everything. There's positive in anything and everything, and you can do it. Things are hard. Trust me. 8 months ago, I was thinking, will we ever release Helios? This is hard. And I won't swear on the podcast, but it's dang hard, okay? dealing with the people, the expectations, and just getting it out there.
Right.
And the morale, because the team, the developers they're donating their time, they're working so hard, and everybody's trying, and we're just not getting there. It's just like, heck, are we ever going to get this thing live? But you just have to persevere. You have to maintain a positive attitude. You got to build up your team. You got to keep everybody stay focused on what the goal is, and get there.
I feel like we could sum up the podcast with that. Things are hard. Yeah. And they're worth it.
Yeah.
And you can be happy through it all.
Exactly.
You know, I learned a phrase from you, a term. Right as you're coming to the conclusion or right as you're coming to the release of a software, you called it the death march.
Yeah.
We're on the death march now. Talking about right as you're getting to the end line, you feel like you just can't get there because you're so many little things that you're tying up, loose ends, that at some point you got to pull the trigger and just release.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And there's a lot of companies that burn out their employees when they put them on the death march, because you've got people that are just killing themselves to make it happen, and oftentimes the death march ends in it's a artificial deadline imposed by management. The team is working their guts out trying to get it done, and then the goal changes, and what you were working towards is no longer the goal, and it's demoralizing.
Right.
It's terrible. Fortunately, even though we were really pushing hard, the goal was always there, and the goal's always been the same.
Yeah.
And so we were able to successfully reach the goal.
You know, it's funny. It's funny that we used to have these meetings, and if Todd were ever not in one of the meetings, we would pull out all the Toddisms. we pulled them all out. Yeah. You know, death by 1,000 cuts. What was the camel one you used to say? There was one about a camel too. I don't remember what it was.
Man, there's a few.
Camel is a horse made by committee.
Yeah,
yes,
that.
Yes, that one.
There are just so many that you used to. Yeah. We used to joke about.
Well, the latest one. So the latest one is, man, it must feel like Helios going live is birthing a baby. I mean, it's just been this really long, laborious labor, and you birthed the baby. And well, my daughter-in-law just last Friday birthed my second grandson.
Hey, congratulations!
So, yeah,
congrats.
Thank you.
That's cool.
And congrats to my son and my daughter-in-law. Beautiful baby. But I held that baby last night, and that baby is just adorable. Beautiful. It was the first time I got a chance to hold him. And Helios, any software, I don't care what it is, any software going live is not
birthing a baby.
It's the better analogy is think of Frankenstein movie, and when the monster comes off the table, that software. Because once that monster is live and moving, you do an awful lot of work to make sure that it's
a good
a positive experience.
Yes. Nice. That's funny.
Yeah.
So we have birthed Frankenstein's monster.
That's right.
There we go.
Another thing.
The monster, I think.
Yeah, he is no Dr. Frankenstein. But they call him Monster Frankenstein.
Okay.
No,
I'm gonna mess this up.
Yeah.
Matt's mixing movies here.
Yeah. Another thing that we did with Helios was that it felt like a marathon sprint.
Yeah.
That's really what it felt like. This is a marathon sprint, and it was Herculean effort by everyone involved. It wasn't just me. This was definitely a team effort, and it wasn't just the developers and the QA. I mean, there's an awful lot of people involved to get that thing live. Yeah. And then when it went live, everybody, I remember when we went live Monday, you guys are like, man, that was the smoothest thing ever. In my head, I'm thinking, calm before the storm, guys, because people haven't really started using it.
Right.
And as soon as everybody started using it, then it's like, okay, what about this? Event check-ins. How come that's so slow? Well, because we're trying to load all 1 million lead records at once. How that got overlooked, well, we got it, kind of thing. Things can happen, but also when you're moving so fast with software, remember the operating mechanisms I was saying that you need to have communication with everybody? There were too many times on Helios where we would just skip the process. The process slows it down, but in the end, it's better. You have quality.
Right.
And so if someone comes to me and says, Todd, I got to have this right now, and I say, Pradeep, I got to have this right now, and he just goes and makes the change, well, no one else knows about it. The QA team has no idea that just got created. And even as good as Pradeep is, mistakes can be made. And that's why we try and put these safeguards in place to catch things.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, and I'm not saying that he did this particular item. I'm just saying that when we function in a scatter, helter-kelter mode, we don't get the best results.
Right.
So what we are doing right now, we've done some restructuring with the team, and how we're following a process to fix any issues in Helios and add new features. They will take a little bit more time than what we've been doing in the past, but when they're done, they will be done correctly, and they will be done with confidence that they will be performant and mostly bug free. I won't say 100% because no one's perfect. Right. But with all of the safeguards in place, it'll be just as stable and solid as possible.
Gotcha. So. Well, that's awesome. I appreciate you coming on our podcast, taking a little bit of time with us.
Happy.
And, it's not every day that we get to talk to Dr. Frankenstein himself. I mean, that's...
Yes.
Yeah, you're about the size of Frankenstein's monster, aren't you?
He's a little taller than me. He's about as good looking as me, though. So.
Whatever. Todd, I appreciate everything that you've done. I know that Helios, while it's been a team sport, has been a labor of love. And I don't think anyone's put any more time into it than you have. You have dedicated weekends, nights, mornings, midday to answer the call and to step up and really help in every way that you can. So thank you.
Much appreciated.
You're welcome.
Very much.
All of us.
All of us.
Yeah.
All of us.
Yes.
Dr. Frankenstein.
I know, many a time I mean, maybe not so much you, but on teams and stuff, I see, I jump on there to handle events and stuff, often late at night. Even, I check them periodically, and it could be 10, 11 p.m., and I see most of your team still greenlit on team. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Still working, still at it. So much appreciated. You also
have to keep in mind that since we have an offshore team, that they're almost exactly 12 hours off of us.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
If we need to interact with them, then we're
the
working
side
at
of the
night,
world.
kind of thing. Yeah. But going forward with the changes that we've made to our process and everything, hopefully all of us can, both the team and offshore team, those of us here, all of us can get back to more of a 40-hour work schedule and actually enjoy a holiday like we have one coming up on Monday.
Oh, yeah.
And maybe take a little PTO. I would laugh to Bob and say, I don't know why I have PTO. It's kind of a joke because I take Friday off and then I work on Saturday.
It's for looks.
What was the point of that?
Right. It's like a spoiler on a Honda Civic.
Yep.
Oh, Matthew. Okay, well, that's been our show for the day. Todd, thank you very much for being our special guest. For everyone at home, I hope that you've enjoyed this time and gotten to understand a little bit better about how not only Helios was created, but how our IT department is run by none other than the VP of IT, Mr. Todd Nichols. So, Todd, thank you very much. Special shout out to Mr. Aaron Peterson as our line editor, cutter, producer, video man.
I push buttons. Most of the time it's record.
Very good.
Thank you.
Except for that one time you forgot.
For the one time I did it.
So most of the time I'd forget to push that one.
Aaron rocks.
I'm adding producer to my
nice. I pushed a button. I'm done. Producer. Mr. Matt Snyder, thank you so much for being the co-host. That is our wrap for the day. Don't forget, Renatus rocks.
It does rock. I'm wearing the hat. So
what?
It rocks.
Yeah. It rocks.
Renatus rocks.
Renatus, dude, usually... Now you agree with me. I'm expecting you to disagree with me, and now
next week I wore the hat. Renatus, I gotta, it's a thing, and it's, it's all good. Renatus does rock.
Renatus rocks the Renatus J.A.M.
That's right. Out.